Hey guys, and welcome to this very special live stream. As you guys know, because I've been hyping it up a lot, Monday is my case going before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. It's Picard versus Magliano. And I wanted to do this live stream because I hope this live stream you get as much out of this live stream as you get out of all my other videos. Today we're talking about the First Amendment, we're talking about jury nullification, we're talking about my case. And what I've realized from doing all these rallies, and as you know, I'm an equal opportunity troll. I've done Bernie rallies, I've done Antifa, I've done Back the Blue, I've done Trump rallies. No matter what side I go to, no matter what side I troll, they both want the same thing. They want only their voices heard, and they want government to shut the other side up. At least that's my experience. So, and instead of, if you guys get one thing from this live stream, I want you to get this. Speak, even if you're the only one speaking. It's very important that we exercise our rights, or else we lose them. And that reminds me of this quote. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. What government and everyone who likes to shut down free speech, they like to go after minorities. They like to go after unpopular opinions. They love to go after people who are on the fringes, because if they can shut them down, then they can shut anyone down. And that is exactly what the topic is about today. The law under which I was arrested for in New York City was criminal contempt. I'm not going to get into the whole history of it because my guests will be doing that today. My lawyer will be doing that, but they enacted this law in New York City because they wanted to shut down communists from protesting near courthouses. And again, if there's anyone that the government or that people are going to go after, it's the unpopular opinion. So I'm going to play the video of what happened in New York City for those who haven't seen it. The date says December 4th, but keep in mind that this didn't happen this year. It happened back in 2017. And then I'm going to introduce my lawyer. Without further ado, here is the video. Hey guys, I'm at the Bronx Hall of Justice. The Bronx Hall of Justice is one of the largest businesses in the Bronx, and they don't produce anything. They don't create a product. They don't manufacture any goods. They just put people in prison. And they put people in prison for petty things like jaywalking and marijuana possession and just victimless crimes. So I'm here to protest that by handing out jury nullification flyers. it's the right of the jury to acquit a defendant if they believe the law to be immoral. So basically, you know all those, you know how marijuana has been decriminalized in New York, but they still arrest people for it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a perfect example of, you know, when jury nullification comes into play. When a defendant faces marijuana charges, they should just be acquitted. Can I interest you in a flyer? Have a good day. Can I interest you in a flyer about your rights? Good, how are you?
Stuff?
Just handing it out to anyone who will take it.
No victim, no crime, no jury, no nullification. Alright, if you might, I'm gonna check up on something. Yeah, just hold on to this.
You want to hold on to it?
No, that's okay. So
all right.
That's it, alright. But something like that might have to have you stand a distance away from the court. So I'm just gonna give you a heads up.
Just so you know, this is public sidewalk.
No, I
so
understand.
Can I interest you in a flyer about your rights?
Sir, I just notified my office what's happening is with that, you're allowed to do it, but you got to stay 200 feet away from the courthouse. So,
What law is that?
I'll get someone to come out here, but we'll show you the paperwork on that also.
Hey guys, so I have my jury info sign out. I've been handing out flyers.
I've been 200 feet away from the courthouse. So
Says who?
Says the law. And if you don't do it
Which
now,
law?
if you don't do it now, I'm going to put handcuffs on you. You're going to be placed under arrest.
Which law?
Do you understand?
Which law?
I don't have to tell you or point to a section. I'm telling you, it's in the criminal procedure law. It's in penal law, actually. You have
Penal
to be
law?
200 feet away. Okay,
And
I'm going to give you
what would I have been arrested?
Listen to me. I'm about to place you under arrest. Is that what you want?
For free speech?
No, for violating the law. The law says you can do this, but you have to be 200 feet away. Is that
For
something
free
you understand?
speech on a public space?
No. The law says you can do that 200 feet away from a courthouse.
Okay, well, you guys said you'd produce that, so I'm not leaving unless you produce it.
Okay, put your hands behind your back. I'm going to place you under arrest.
Here, I need a key.
Yeah, inside here. Keep facing the wall.
You're not going to leave these on, are you?
Well, we're going to take them off temporarily.
Ow.
Get in there.
Ouch. What am I being charged with?
Well, there's a couple of things you're going to try with, okay?
Okay.
Hold on.
Criminal contempt.
Okay.
Can't do is okay, gonna pat you down. I don't know why you wanted to go this route, sir. When a uniformed officer tells you to move from a place, that's what you're supposed to do. Okay. Nobody's questioning you. Let me just get his ID. Let's start this process. It's just gonna be a pain in the ass.
Got a case?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any medical issues? Yes? You want to answer?
Oh, what? I want to try him a jury intimidation check. It's a jury after.
You try to tell them, right? You try to tell them. You got to be 200, but they want to see everything in writing. So you'll see it in writing when you be in the writing.
Exactly.
Already?
How are you today? All right, started early, huh? What, already?
We don't play around here, Sarge.
It's gonna be a while.
I don't think this is a good thing. Assistance in court.
So what you guys don't see in this video is that this was my first arrest. It's an intimidating experience to get arrested, especially when your criminal defense attorney is out of the country. And I had no idea what I was getting arrested for. But I decided to take the arrest because I knew, on a public sidewalk is where you're supposed to have the most protection under the First Amendment. And I knew it wasn't right because 200 feet away in New York City is a long distance. I couldn't even go across the street to hand out flyers. And, the law just struck me as overly broad. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you my lawyer who will be arguing before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals on Monday. Here he is. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So would you kind of introduce yourself to everyone, let them know what you do?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Hauss. I'm a senior staff attorney at the ACLU's Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project, and I litigate First Amendment cases.
So why'd you decide to become a lawyer?
I decided to become a lawyer, frankly, to work for the ACLU. When I was in high school, it was around the time of the Iraq War. And I remember the rush to war, the way protesters against the war were being treated. And it was a lonely time to be a dissident, I think, in the United States. And I remember that the ACLU's motto at that time was "Dissent is patriotic." And so that's something I found really inspiring. I learned a lot about the ACLU's history of fighting for civil rights and civil liberties for over a century. And that's kind of what was my dream, to become a lawyer at the ACLU. So I'm really happy to have this job.
And you went to Yale, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yale and Harvard?
Yep, I went to Yale for college and Harvard for law school. That's right.
Okay. So who has been the most influential person in your life and why?
Probably the most influential people in my life are my parents. They just really inspired in me a commitment to constitutional principle, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, and they were just excellent parents. And so everything that's come through in my life since then, I think I owe to them.
Parents are definitely influential in everyone's life. They can make or break you.
Really.
So tell us about some of the cases you've taken on and what you're working on right now.
Sure thing. So right now I'm litigating a number of cases in addition to this one. In fact, later next week, I'll be arguing in the First Circuit Court of Appeals in a challenge to New Hampshire's criminal defamation law. We're arguing that the law violates basic due process principles because it gives police officers too much discretion to prosecute their critics. And we're arguing that the law violates the First Amendment. I'm also please.
Sorry, go ahead.
No worries.
So this is, if I'm not mistaken, I read about this case as they arrested a guy for insulting the police or something like that.
He criticized a local police captain. He said that the captain was a coward and that he was covering up for a dirty cop. And the captain, felt aggrieved by this. He felt it wasn't true and it was unfair. And normally when people feel that somebody else has defamed them, their recourse is either to, react to that with more speech, or in certain cases, they can file a civil lawsuit. But in about half the states in the country, they have these criminal defamation laws that also allow prosecutors, police officers to arrest and prosecute people that they don't like. And historically, I think it's just been consistently shown that criminal defamation laws are used to prosecute critics of those in power. So that's exactly.
They had these way back when I did a lot of research on this, but they had these criminal libel laws, if I'm not mistaken, where you would get arrested for, outright criticizing government officials.
That's right. It comes from the Court of the Star Chamber in England. And the idea was if you criticize the great men of the realm, that you could be held criminally liable for sedition. So that's
and
really.
It even came over here, right?
And then it came over here. A lot of the American colonies had these kind of seditious libel laws. And in fact, in the end of the 18th century, they passed a federal Alien and Sedition Act that criminalized sedition. It was one of the big controversies around the election of 1800, the battle between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. People really hated that the federal government was prosecuting newspaper writers predominantly who were critical of the Federalist administration. And so when Jefferson came into office, he, repealed the law and they paid back all the fines that had been imposed for people who were accused of violating the law. So that I think set a precedent that, we shouldn't be prosecuting people for defamation in the United States. But the laws have stayed on the books for 2 centuries now. And so we're arguing that it's time for them to go.
It is absolutely time for them to go. Now you've also had boycott cases, correct? Believe it or not, there have been states that have outlawed boycotting, whether it be Jewish businesses or what have you.
So what the state laws that we are challenging do is they require government contractors to sign a form promising that if they get the government contract, that they're not going to boycott Israel or any companies operating in Israel or territories controlled by Israel, which really refers to the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank. And so, it's an attempt, I think, to create the perception that participating in what are known as BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions, boycotts of companies that are operating in conjunction with the Israeli government or that are operating in Israeli settlements, that somehow that is illegal. And so it's really, I think, part of a larger public relations war against the boycott movement. But our argument is, I think, very simple, which is that the First Amendment protects the right to boycott. Boycotts are a fundamental form of political protest going all the way back to the Boston Tea Party. And the Supreme Court held in 1982 unanimously that boycotts are protected under the First Amendment. So we maintain that these Israel anti-boycott laws are just as unconstitutional as any other type of anti-boycott law would be. These are how people express their opposition to government policies, and that's protected. Absolutely.
Would you say these are mostly southern states?
It's really a range. In fact, one of the states that doesn't have a requirement for contractors, but New York has an executive order that Governor Cuomo signed saying that any companies that are boycotting Israel cannot receive state funds and investment. So it's really all over the map. I do think that in the last few years, it's become kind of a partisan issue with the Republican Party taking a much more vigorous approach with respect to these laws, and many Democratic politicians questioning them on First Amendment grounds. But this is not a partisan issue. The First Amendment protections apply to everybody, and they apply broadly. And so some of these laws were passed by bipartisan majorities, and that doesn't make them any more constitutional.
Absolutely. What would you say is the most challenging thing about being a lawyer?
I mean, honestly, I think the most challenging thing about being a lawyer is losing.
Besides me.
No, you're
as a client.
It's a pleasure to represent you, Michael. The best part of the job is our clients. It's always inspiring to represent people who are willing to stand up for their beliefs, who are willing to risk their job or risk arrest, risk prosecution to stand up for what's right. So that's honestly, that's the best part of the job. The worst part is when we lose, because, we believe very strongly in every case that we take. We think we're right on the law. We think we're right on the principle. Sometimes it doesn't pan out, but we get very emotionally invested in our cases, and it's tough when they don't work out the way we hope they will.
Do you have a case in mind that was like the most upsetting loss to you?
Actually,
like where you were sure you were going to win, but you didn't.
Well, I'll give you an example. Actually, in our Arkansas challenge to that state's Israel anti-boycott law. I mean, I think on the law, I just think we're 100% right on the merits. We got a controlling Supreme Court decision that was unanimous, that everybody, I think, at the time that decision came down, understood that it provides robust constitutional protection for boycotts. And in Arkansas, the district judge saw things a different way and said that, no, there is no First Amendment protection for boycotts at all. And, I don't doubt that he made that decision in good faith, but I think he got it really wrong. And it's hard when you think the law is so clear, but sometimes people just disagree with you, and that's just part of the game.
Right. So how did you become involved in this case, in Picard versus Magliano?
I became involved in this case because we heard from our New York affiliate that you had been arrested under this courthouse protest law. We've been skeptical of New York courthouse protest law for a long time, and I think we wanted to find a way to challenge it because we think it's so blatantly unconstitutional. And this seemed like a great vehicle for doing that. We've also been, pretty heavily involved in protecting people who advocate jury nullification. Now, people have a lot of different views about whether it's appropriate to tell people about jury nullification or what have you, but it is constitutionally protected speech as long as you're not trying to tamper with a juror's vote in a particular case. And so we've been very robust and vigorous in trying to defend against prosecutions for people who are advocating jury nullification. And I think the two things that were going on in this case were of great interest to me, which is, one, striking down this courthouse protest law that dates back to the McCarthy era and was designed to stifle the protests against the prosecutions of the Communist Party leaders in the 1950s, some of the most reviled prosecutions in American history. And this law was designed to silence the people who were protesting those prosecutions and saw the injustice at that time. So, we would very like for this law to be overturned.
Kind of against the, backdrop, communism wasn't a very popular political, in politics back then. There were, the government was certainly after, communists for, allegedly spying on the U.S.
That's right. And actually, I think the prosecutions in Dennis, which were the ones that this law was designed to respond to, they were just arguing that the communists, by virtue of, standing up for their beliefs, were trying to overthrow the United States government and were engaged in their own kind of sedition. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court upheld those prosecutions, but it's in the decades since then, I think there's a broad consensus that those prosecutions were fundamentally unjust. So the protesters were right and the judges were wrong.
Mm. And just for the benefit of the audience, what is jury nullification?
So jury nullification is the power of a jury to return a verdict of not guilty, even when the facts support the legal conclusion that the suspect is guilty. So if a jury says that this prosecution is unjust, it's excessive, what have you, they can say, we're disregarding the instructions given to us by the judge and we're going to acquit anyways. And it's a fundamental structural check on the power of the government to bring, unjust prosecutions, is the fact that they don't just have to convince legal scholars or their hand-picked officials that the prosecutions are warranted. They also have to convince everyday members of the public that they don't get to hand select that prosecution should go forward. And so it's a fundamental check on government abuse. And it really is the power of the people in its purest form.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you heard about, and this is completely off the cuff, but I'm curious if you heard about a case in the District of Connecticut where they were, where one of the judges, I guess, allowed Norm Pattis. Do you know who he is or no?
I don't know who he is.
he's a well-known lawyer in Connecticut. He allowed Norm Pattis to inform the jury of jury nullification, and he got reamed by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly not a very popular principle in the judicial system.
I mean, I think I can understand why judges don't like it, right? Because they think the law should be orderly, and then the jury should not be putting itself in the place of the legislature and deciding for itself who gets convicted and who doesn't. They think that everybody in the courtroom should be duty bound to follow and apply the law as it exists, and not what they would have it be. And certainly, if the shoe were on the other foot, we wouldn't like it very much if juries convicted just because they didn't like the defendant's political beliefs or something like that. So I can understand why judges don't love the idea of jury nullification, don't like their jurors being informed about it. They're afraid that it's going to interfere with the due administration of justice. But be that as it may, the speech advocating jury nullification, so long as it's not someone improperly trying to influence a juror in a particular case, is protected political speech. It's at the heart of the First Amendment.
Right. My whole thing about jury nullification is that you shouldn't have to check your conscience at the door. And I remember, when I was first reading up about jury nullification in 2016, I remember thinking, this is a great solution, for, when government, tries to prosecute people for tyrannical laws. And I remember reading, about the history of it. William Mead and William Penn in London. The meeting of, they met with, a bunch of Quakers, and, the king was insulted by that, so they arrested him. They arrested both of them. And when the jury wouldn't convict because they believed that law to be unjust, that was sort of when my understanding of when jury nullification came about, or one of the first applications of it. So, can you give us a rundown of what happened in the district court? Sort of like summarize, our arguments and New York's arguments.
Sure thing. So we brought this lawsuit, and our arguments were very simple. This law violates the First Amendment because it regulates speech on a public street. And as I think you were mentioning earlier, that's a traditional public forum, a place that has been held open from time immemorial for places of public protest. And so the First Amendment rules that apply on public streets are at their strongest. And one of the big rules that the First Amendment has for how the government regulates speech in those areas is that the government can't censor speech based on its content. They can regulate the time, place, and manner of when you speak. So they can say, for example, you can't be blaring a loudspeaker after midnight and before 5 a.m. because they're going to wake everybody up. But what they can't do is say, you can talk about this thing, but you can't talk about that thing. And so the real problem with New York's courthouse protest law is it says, here's one thing you can't talk about, anything relating to a trial. And so that's suppressing speech based on its content. That's presumptively unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The government has to satisfy a very, very strict test to show that such laws can survive constitutional scrutiny, and has to show it's necessary for a compelling governmental interest, and that there's no other way that they could satisfy that interest. So we said the government can't do that here. This law is facially unconstitutional. It needs to be struck down. The government responded and essentially tried to say, you shouldn't even be deciding this case because this statute doesn't prohibit what Michael Picard wants to do. We don't think it prohibits advocating jury nullification with these pamphlets and flyers outside the courthouse. And the officer who arrested you, Michael, they just got it wrong. They didn't know what they were doing, and too bad. So we had a fight with that in front of the district court. And what the district court held essentially is that the law could be read to prohibit your advocacy. Maybe that's not the only reading of the law. Maybe it's not even the best reading, but it could be read to do that. And because a police officer's already read the law to do that, already arrested you for it, and when the district attorney let you go, they didn't say, well, this law clearly protects what Michael Picard wants to do. Instead, what they said is, well, they didn't measure how far you were from the courthouse. We don't know if you were within 200 feet or not. And so nobody said that the law doesn't apply to you. And so given the fact that the law could be read to apply to you, and given the fact that nobody suggested it wasn't applied to you, that's enough to get us in the courthouse door. And once you're in the courthouse door, we have to look at the law and we have to say, does this law satisfy the First Amendment? And there's no way it could. And the government didn't really have an argument on that. They just said, well, it's fine to not prosecute people like Michael Picard, but if other people are talking about individual cases, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. The government didn't really explain why the other alternatives, for example, we already have laws against jury tampering. We already have laws against obstructing access to a courthouse. And other states have laws that prohibit picketing or parading with the intent to disrupt the administration of justice. Those laws are much narrower. They only would bar speech if it's in fact intended to cause an unjust result. This law says no matter, if you're just a single protester standing outside the courthouse, not talking to anybody in particular, you can still be prosecuted. So the government didn't really have, I think, a very satisfying answer to that. The district court held that you do get in the courthouse door, and that because the law is so clearly unconstitutional, it has to be struck down. So the government's appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and their arguments now are essentially the same ones they raised in the district court. They say the law shouldn't be read to prohibit your speech, and therefore we shouldn't even be arguing about whether the law is constitutional. That the district court should have narrowed its relief to just apply to you and not to protect anybody else, and that the Second Circuit should basically send this over to the New York Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, so that they can interpret the statute and hold that it doesn't apply to you, and then not address the bigger constitutional issues that the district court identified. I think the fundamental theme of the government's argument is that the court shouldn't address the constitutional problem that the district court found and should just save that for another day. But in the meantime, lots of speech is going to be chilled, constitutional rights will still be violated, and a lot of harm is going to result.
So if I'm understanding you, they're basically saying that I have no standing to challenge the law, even though they arrested me for it. And also that they need this law, even though they've only enforced it, 4 times in the last 2 decades or so?
That's right. And at least one of those other 4 times was an obvious mistake. They applied it to somebody who was disrupting proceedings in a courtroom, which the law doesn't apply to.
And just to be clear, I wasn't disrupting proceedings.
You were not disrupting anything. You were standing outside on a public sidewalk. That's exactly right.
Okay. And just to make it super clear, you can hold a sign and hand out flyers on a public sidewalk.
In almost every circumstance, you can. There are some very limited circumstances where you can't, and those have to be clearly identified. But none of those exceptions apply here.
Okay. So what's at stake in this case?
I think fundamentally what's at stake in this case is the right of New Yorkers to engage in protests outside of courthouses, which is their right, which is protected under the First Amendment. If this law is upheld, then the place where people want to protest an unjust prosecution, say, they can't do it. When the people want to talk about the problems in our criminal justice system, which are so endemic and such a major topic of public concern and debate, the place where it's most relevant to have those discussions, people are going to be chilled from having those discussions in front of the courthouse.
Exactly. It amazes me that this law was even put on the books in the first place, because where is the most relevant place to talk about what's wrong with our criminal justice system? Right at the courts.
That's right.
And so for people just joining us, what's going on Monday?
So on Monday, we will be arguing your appeal in the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. And that's the federal Court of Appeals that deals with federal cases coming from New York, Vermont, and Connecticut.
And would this affect any other states? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I think New York is basically unique in having this kind of courthouse protest law. Some other states have courthouse protest laws, but they're narrower and they're more appropriately tailored to protests that are designed to interfere with the administration of justice, or that effectively interfere with the administration of justice. So if you have a large mob outside a courthouse, shouting convict, 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 and the people are concerned that that's going to sway the jurors or the judge or something, those laws would prohibit that. This is a very different situation. This is a law that says no matter how many people are doing it, no matter what the risk is that this would influence anybody improperly, it's prohibited if it's about criminal justice issues within 200 feet of a courthouse.
Mm. All right. What do you expect? Like, people are wondering what happens in the Second Circuit, or what happens when you argue before an appeals court. Do you have anything you can give us that would help them understand?
Sure. So when you have an argument in the Court of Appeals, it's usually somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes, depending. In our case, it'll be 10 minutes per side, so it'll be 20 minutes total. The appellant, the person who disagrees with what the district court did, goes up first.
And that's New York.
And that's, in this case, that's the state of New York. That's right. So they'll talk first. They'll probably go on for like 7 or 8 minutes. And then they'll reserve a little bit of time so that they can talk at the very end. Then when they sit down, I go up, I give, our presentation. Usually in Court of Appeals arguments, the judges are very actively involved. They ask a lot of questions. So it's not like I'll just be up there giving a speech for 10 minutes. I'll give like a 30 second to minute long speech, kind of just laying out the issues, and then I'll start the presentation. But the judges very frequently just jump in and start with a lot of questions. So that's what we're expecting to happen on Monday. And then the appellant will go up again for the last couple of minutes and try to respond to any themes that arose, when the court was talking to me. So it's that kind of back and forth.
Okay. And if you can, this is again another question that I had. What's your what kind of prep do you do beforehand?
What kind of prep do we do beforehand? So the first thing I do is I reread all the briefs. Then I reread all the cases and statutes and law review articles that are cited in the briefs, and just try to make sure I understand everything that's going on, make sure I didn't miss anything. And that helps get me back into the mindset of the case. Then we schedule a couple of moots, and these are basically like pretend court hearings where I get my colleagues to come in and pretend to be the judges, and they just pepper me with as many hard questions as they can. And
sort of like I do on the phone.
Exactly. And so, but they're pretending to be judges as opposed to themselves or as clients. And so and they're trying to be mean judges because they want to make it as hard as possible. So that way, when I'm up there on Monday, if the judges hopefully won't be as aggressive, but I'm ready for anything. So we usually do 2 of those. In fact, the second moot is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. So that's when I'll be doing that. And then, the night before, I do my best to get a good night's sleep, so I'm able to get up bright and early and head over to the courthouse.
Mm-hmm. What kind of questions are you expecting?
Well, usually, in these kinds of cases, you get a lot of questions from the judge, basically about anything from the briefs that was kind of unresolved or that they didn't quite understand, and also things to kind of test your theory. And so, what they're saying is look, if I rule for you, what's that going to mean for these other 5 cases down the line that I'm envisioning? Because they would, especially in appeals courts, what the judges want to know is not just what's going to happen in this case, but how am I going to make sure that the rule I apply here, because it's going to apply in lots of other cases, it becomes precedent. Is that a good rule? Is it an administrable rule? Will it have unforeseen consequences that I should be worried about? And so they try to test that, sometimes with hypotheticals, sometimes by asking you about similar cases. And sometimes they just want to see what your support is for a particular argument. So there'll be a lot of questions like that, I think.
Okay. And what do you sort of see in the future, in future cases, First Amendment cases?
It's really hard to predict with First Amendment cases because, for one thing, I think in general, First Amendment protections in this country are very strong. It's one of the things America does really well is provide pretty robust legal protections for free speech. Now, those protections aren't always realized in practice. Not everybody gets the benefit of those First Amendment protections, but on paper, the doctrine is quite good. It's really robust. So, the questions are always well, what new crazy thing are legislators going to try to do because they want to, they have their pet political cause or pet thing they don't like, whether it's flag burning or boycotts or misinformation is probably going to be a big one for the next few years. There's always some new cultural panic that leads legislatures to pass laws that I think are often very blatantly unconstitutional. So a lot of it is defensive, right? We're here to protect the principles that ACLU lawyers for 100 years have been fighting for, and to make sure that they remain enshrined in American jurisprudence.
And what kind of cases does the ACLU take on?
So we take on generally impact litigation, which means we look at lawsuits. We want to take on cases that we think are going to have effects on for a lot of people. So we're not predominantly a legal services organization. We don't just provide help to anybody who needs it. That's great and noble work, and some of my very good friends work at legal services organizations, but we view our role as fundamentally different. Our role is to make sure that the principles that have been established remain good law, and where the law is unjust, to change it and to make it better. So we look for cases that are going to have that kind of broad impact. Then the second major factor in our case selection is we defend civil rights and civil liberties. So, we don't take on like consumer class actions or something like that generally. There are lots of organizations that focus on that kind of stuff. We view our role as, please go ahead.
You don't take on criminal cases either, correct?
We generally don't take on criminal cases. Criminal law really is its own kind of practice, and the people who do it have to have specialized training for it. It's different than civil practice in all kinds of ways. And so generally, lawyers at the ACLU predominantly are civil litigators. So that means, we're arguing in civil court. It's its own kind of thing.
Okay. Now I do get a lot of messages of people, asking me to forward their cases to the ACLU, but I never do, because I don't think that's my place.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ACLU has its own process of vetting, vetting what they take on.
That's absolutely
so for those people who think they have a case that the ACLU would be interested in, how do they go about submitting it?
So what I would urge you to do, if you have a case that you think the ACLU should take a look at, is to contact your local ACLU affiliate. In New York, that's the New York Civil Liberties Union, for example. I think all the ACLU affiliates have intake lines. So they have a place where people who think that they might have legal claims can explain what those are. And then we have specialists who review all the intakes and decide whether it's a case we can take on. If not, whether we should make a referral to another lawyer who can help this person out. And so that is really the process that we have for finding and identifying new cases. It comes up through the state affiliates. And then in certain cases, the national office will get involved if it's an area of strategic importance or it involves very particular issues that we've been working on. But in general, the affiliates are the entities that are the boots on the ground defending people's constitutional rights day in and day out. And that's who I would encourage you to contact.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think this was a really thorough interview. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. And I just have to brag about you for a minute, because as all of my lawyers will tell you, I'm not your typical client. I'm very involved. And I think, anyone who could deal with me deserves an award. So, thank you for representing me. Thank you for putting up with me, and good luck on Monday. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Michael. It's a real pleasure having you as a client. I mean, this is why we do the work. I love representing gadflies. So thanks for everything you do. And we'll keep our fingers crossed for Monday.
I do have to say, I've been hounding you with legal questions day in and day out for 3 years. So I really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. It's how I earn my salary.
Thank you very much. And
thank you. Have a good day.
luck.
Take care.
You too. Bye. So, as you heard, we have a case on Monday before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and we're arguing, in case anyone hasn't heard, we're arguing in front of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in my case, Picard versus Magliano. And this case involves standing out on a public sidewalk, handing out jury nullification flyers. And for those of you who don't know what jury nullification is the ability to vote not guilty despite all of the evidence, if you believe the law to be misapplied or immoral. And where this really comes into play is, a lot of it has come into play in petty drug charges. It's come in to play when all the way back in the 1600s with William Penn. And so this is like a common law tradition. What happened in the case of William Penn and William Mead is in London, they organized a Quaker meeting. And in England back then, there was only one way of worshiping God. There was only one religion. And any other religion, any other belief got squashed and you got sent to jail. And so they organized a meeting of the Quakers, and they preached in the street, and they got arrested by the king. The kings saw this as an affront to him ruling, and the king's men arrested him, and they went to trial. The jury found them not guilty despite all of the evidence because they believed that the law was immoral. And jury nullification is a powerful way to protest government. And protesting government is, dissent is patriotism, as Brian from the ACLU said. And anyways, I would like to open this up to any questions that you guys may have on any topic, just for a little bit. And so hit me with your best questions. I do read this chat. I try to read every comment, but sometimes it scrolls so fast that I miss some. Yes, there will be more videos coming. I plan on going to a rally within the next few days. So stay tuned for more videos. So I can only tell you what I do to prepare. I basically, first of all, I go on Google Maps and, look up the location, see, plan out where I'll be standing. Because if you stand in the wrong place, then say private property, for instance, the police can arrest you or cite you for that. And I also, look up the laws that, this protest will invoke. And, I don't know all of the laws, and I certainly didn't know the criminal contempt statute in New York when I went to New York. I tried my best to look up all of the laws, but I just didn't. There are so many laws on the books that, makes it impossible to know every law, which might be invoked in your protest. So I had no idea about the criminal contempt statute. When I was in jail, and they told me criminal contempt, I thought a judge had ordered, that because it's, the Constitution recognizes that judges have an inherent power, an inherent contempt power, an inherent power to hold you in contempt, I should say, if you're disorderly, because they need to administer justice. And So I thought a judge had ordered that. The problem with that is, when you're found in contempt in court by a judge, usually the same judge that held you in contempt gets to preside over your hearing. So I wonder which way they're going to rule. But it was somewhat relieving to know that it was a criminal contempt statute, because the judges have nearly unlimited power to hold you in criminal contempt, and you can face up to, I believe, 6 months in jail and or $1,000 fine, something like that. So that's just a little bit about what I do to prepare. I also like to have people with me. I like to have people, like a third party documenting things. I try to never go to protests alone, because if anything happens, then I at least have someone to document and help me out, when I'm in jail. This time in the New York case, I actually was alone. And that created a lot of issues for me. So from then on, I decided that if I can help it, I won't be going alone to protests. George Soros is paying me. So I saw a question. This needs more context. In Connecticut, now it is both legal recreationally and medically. But there, for some reason, are still some states that, won't even allow it medically, I believe. So there are a number of ways you can support me. One of them is by going to PayPal. Hold on, I'm trying to find. By going to, here we go. These are some ways to support me. You can go to paypal.me/professional douche, or you can send me Cash App. There will be more ways to support me in the future. Stay tuned for next week about that. And if you can't do it financially, that's perfectly fine. You can support me by engaging in your by spreading freedom. You can support me by supporting freedom, and you do that by speaking, by using your free speech. When we don't exercise our rights, that's when the government takes them away. So no matter what, stand up for freedom. If you guys want to email me, my email is Michael, Michael, at Picard, PICARD.co. Yes, it's .co. It's not .com. It's .co. I can't give you the exact time or who I'm trolling, because then it kind of ruins the surprise. But I'll be trolling within the next few days, and hopefully I'll have a video within the next few weeks. This is a great question. Yes, I am a voluntarist. I believe that all relationships should be voluntary. All transactions should be voluntary. And anyone who does things by force is immoral. I have not seen Diana Ploss in a long time, and I'm sort of going through withdrawals because I miss Diana, and I want to hang out with her soon. I do not feel hated, and that's because of all my amazing fans. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing, for supporting me, for donating, for watching my videos. I love you guys, and it means the world to me that you guys are supporting me. I do have a regular job. I own a video production company. If you ever want to hire me for a video, you can go to gadfly.com, GADFLY.com, gadfly.com. And that's my video production company. I never went on a date with Samuel. Samuel, if you're watching, call me. EJ, thank you so much, and thank your 9-year-old son for me. If I knew his name, I would address him right now, but thank your son for me for watching, and thank you guys again so much for your support. And it means the world to me. Thankfully, Rayla did not win. She was running against Ayanna Pressley. I believe she only got like 0.3% of the votes or something like that. It was some ridiculously small number like that. And, Rayla was never going to win because she espouses hate and bigotry. And, the people of Boston know better than to elect someone who does something like that. And on a funny note, Rayla actually, for those who are just like subscribing and don't know the whole backstory, Rayla actually sued me for $100,000, claiming that I had ruined her campaign. And of course, the judge dismissed it. It was a ridiculous lawsuit, but she sued me for $100,000, and the judge threw it out on the first court date. I've done 1 or 2 music videos, but not much in the way of music videos. I like to do a lot of real estate work. If you go to my production website, gadfly.com, you'll see some of my work. I've done aerial footage of Connecticut, sort of, as a to show people what my capabilities are as a drone pilot. Yes, this is my website for video production work. There are so many to choose from. What is my favorite troll? I have to say it was probably, I had never done anything like this before, but I was like really embarrassed to dress up in a pig costume the first time I did it, because who dresses up in a pig costume? But I did it, and that was probably one of my favorite trolls. Runner-up would be probably be the All Pigs Matter rally in Torrington, where I crashed the stage. Nobody liked me after that. Like, people were smashing my sign down. They were threatening me. Once the police left, they said they would beat me up. It was just, people have such a negative reaction to other people's opinion. And the funny thing is, I'm a jokester. Who gets mad at a jokester? But people do. So what made me start trolling was approximately back in late 2000, maybe, I forgot when exactly it was, when the first Trump rally was, but it was something like either early 2016 or early 2017. And I went to a Trump rally with a sign saying, with a bunch of bricks drawn onto the poster, and it said "wall." That was to make the Trumpkins make them think I was on their side. And I also wore the American flag as a cape, and it was dragging on the ground. So people were getting so confused as to which side I was on. Of course, I kept telling them I was on their side. And this one guy, he's like known around Connecticut for, waving his flag on street corners, just, any day of the week. His name is Ziggy. He's like an ultra patriot, so he got super pissed off at me, and he tried to offer to buy my flag for $10. I was like, I paid $29 for it. I'm not gonna sell it for that much, or for that little. And so the reason I got started trolling was because I realized, like, both sides essentially want the same thing. They want only their voices heard, and they want government to shut the other side up. So when I wasn't getting anywhere back then, I was probably more of a libertarian. You know, I was still arguing politics on Facebook and, you know, getting nowhere. So, you know, the reason I got started in trolling and activism was to take my message to the streets. Um, and, you know, kind of point out the hypocrisy, kind of point out that we're, you know, losing our freedoms, you know, that America, the land of the free, is just a motto now, you know, and it is. If I can get arrested for holding up a sign on a public sidewalk and handing a flyer to someone, you know, then how is that a free country? How is it a free country if you can get arrested by the Stanford police chief because my sign offended him? That's what the First Amendment is about. It's not protecting popular speech, because popular speech is already protected by, you know, the masses. The First Amendment, the freedom of speech, was meant to protect unpopular speech. So that's just sort of a little bit more about, you know, why I got into trolling. You know, pretty much the only First Amendment audit type videos I watch are um, Johnny 50. You know, I also watch Audit the Audit. I love that channel, by the way. If you haven't followed um, Johnny 50, or if you haven't followed Audit the Audit, go check them out. They're a great channel. This is a great question. I guess I don't file charges against people um, because I have all I need in my video. You know, I've already shown, you know, what hypocrites people can be. On the one hand, you know, someone will scream freedom of speech all day long. And then on the other hand, they get violent when people express opinions that aren't their own. And I don't, you know, I've come to the realization that when you call the police, you have to come to the realization that it could end up in their death, because the cops only know one language. They only know force. They only know, you know, and if you don't obey them, you know, that they will shoot you. So I'd rather, I don't agree with the police. I don't, you know, I don't believe in yeah, I just don't um I don't agree with the police, with using the police, I should say, because they're about force. My scariest moment while trolling. I would have to say when I was in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And if Rod Weber, if you don't know who Rod Weber is, he's a performance artist. He does, you know, sort of the same kind of stuff I do. He is awesome. If you don't know who Rod Weber is, look him up. And he recently got arrested in New York City for going to Joe Biden's his son's going to an art thing, an art store, and I forgot what it was called, but it was an art show or something like that. And he spray painted on the wall right beside one of his Joe Biden's son's paintings, which are like selling for like 500,000, and he doesn't have any history in painting whatsoever. That makes total sense. Anyways, he used like washable spray paint to paint on the wall, Daddy Warbucks or something like that. And so go check out Rod's stuff. Look him up on Facebook. Look him up on YouTube. He's also coming out with a documentary soon. So, check that out as well. And so anyways, we were in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And I was kneeling on the flag, praying to Allah. And these people started surrounding me. It can be intimidating, especially when you're on your knees and you don't have much leverage, and they're standing on top of you, like screaming at you. So that I would have to say that was, one moment where I didn't know what would happen. I do video production work. I'm also going to school full time. I am finishing my bachelor degree in English, and then I want to go to law school as well. So what I do for a living is I do video production work. I do drone work, aerial footage of houses, what have you. And I do video work for, real estate agents, for companies, etc. If you want to check out, my work, if you want to hire me to make a video for you, you can go to gadfly.com, GADFLY.com, or you can email me at michael@picard.co. Right now I am 32 and I turn 33 next week. Feel free to ask more questions. I do have mace, but I don't use it unless I don't escalate things unless I'm in a dire situation. I do have a drone pilot's license. I didn't really want to get it, but because it's just another inroad into my life, which government has now. But it's my livelihood, and I don't want to get stuck with a $100,000 fine or however much the FAA charges these days. I consider myself a pacifist. I don't like violence. I don't like, fighting. The only way in which I would defend myself is, and self-defense is a perfectly valid thing. But I would never defend myself unless I had to. Because think about it, you're in a crowd, you're in a crowd of, maybe 20, 30, 40 people at some rallies, and it's either just you or it's you and someone else. So guess who's going to win if it comes down to it? The non-aggression principle is a great principle to live by. We should all live by, don't aggress against others unless they aggress against you. My birthday is October 29th. I consider it a fun thing to do. I do it because the reason I started trolling was because I enjoyed doing it. I enjoy, offending people. I forgot who said this, and maybe I can look it up. But okay, so Linus Torvalds, I'm probably butchering his name, but he's the founder of Linux. He says, I like offending people because I think people who get offended should be offended. And, the people who put like the time and energy into being offended by other viewpoints, they should be offended, like I said, you're going to get all riled up over someone who's just joking. Are you kidding me? Like, there's more to life than that, I am non-religious. I could care less about religion. At the end of the day, it's pretty much just another control mechanism like government is. Um, for most of history, there's been like a power struggle between the government and the church over, who would be in control of the people. And I think both the government and religion are just control mechanisms. They just have different ways of going about it. Like, the church says, give me your money or you're going to hell for most of history. The government says, give me your money or you're going to jail. I wasn't going to address this tonight, but since people keep asking, that's going to be addressed in next week's live stream. T-shirts and merch I have exciting news for you guys, but next week. So stay tuned for next week. It'll be next Thursday at the same time. So October 28th, I believe. If someone could check that, if next Thursday is October 28th. But yeah, I'll address merch next week. Thank you for confirming. So on October 28th at 7 p.m., I will send out a reminder to everyone just to, just to remind everyone. I saw this comment and it disappeared. Oh, here it is. Justice for Gabby is right. It's a tragic case. It just seems like the police really dropped the ball on this one. Because like in every other case, there are news crews, there are police, sitting outside of someone they suspect sitting outside their home. But in this case, there was nothing, and the guys slipped right through their fingers. These are the kind of questions I love. So other than injustice, I really care about freedom. I really care about helping the less fortunate. Back in 2017, I had the opportunity to go to Puerto Rico after, I think it was Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico. I had the chance to go there and bring thousands of pounds of supplies, including water, toiletries, just basic needs that weren't getting met because of all the devastation over there. So, I'd say those are two things that I care most about: injustice, freedom, and helping those who are less fortunate. I did not throw paper towels at them like Trump did. It was like he was playing basketball or something. Anyways. I am wearing pants. I'm wearing jeans to be exact. This is a good question. Another good question. I would say my morals come from my mom. My mom was all about, she taught me, everything. She believed in me before I believed in myself. And, as I said in the beginning of this, parents are transformational figures in your life. They can either make you or they can break you. And I would say, my mom always taught me, not to look down on people, unless you're helping them up. She always taught me to speak up for myself, to speak out when I see something wrong. And my mom, she passed away back in 2016, a day after celebrating my birthday. And she is the most influential person in my life. She is why I've developed such a strong voice. Why I've developed the need to help the less fortunate. She is why I care so much about injustice. I believe that if we are truly to embrace freedom, then it's not my decision, what a woman does with her own body, and on the other side of things, people say my body, my choice, but they only believe that, when it's convenient for them. My body, my choice should work, in every situation, as long as you're not harming other people. If it just has to do with your body, then it should be solely your choice. I don't have any right to tell you what to do with your own body. I'm still trying to figure this one out myself, especially since, it takes every fiber of my being not to laugh. But sometimes I get pushed over the edge and I can't help but laugh. Like, when the lady was repeating, we deep throat the whole boot. Because it was like innocent, she had no idea what it meant. That's what made it so funny. I'm his very distant grandfather. I should say very distant great 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 grandfather. So here's the link to donate. I saw someone comment that they don't see a link to donate. Again, you can donate to paypal.me/professional douche, or you can donate to Cash App by using the same username. There will be more ways to support my channel coming up soon, coming up next week to be precise. On October 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be going live again. And on the agenda, I will be discussing more ways to support the channel as well as merch. So I know everyone's been asking, these questions consistently. So I've heard you, and stay tuned for October 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will be going live to talk about those exact things. If you want to support the ACLU, they have, you can go to ACLU.org, and, at the top of their website, okay. Hold on one sec. So you can see that at the top of their website, on the ACLU, it's aclu.org. You can donate there, or you can just click this button right here, donate down at the bottom. And it gives you ways to, donate, give monthly, become a member, stuff like that. If you want to, one sec. If you want to donate to me, here are my links. Just going to show you. So it's the link is wrong. It's paypal.me/professional douche. And you can see here's a way to donate money. It's got my picture right here, my name, my username, and your friendly neighborhood troll. I would definitely go to space with Elon Musk if I could. I would go to space just in general. I would love the opportunity, to be able to explore space. Unfortunately, I can't answer this because then, I have people who go to these rallies that follow me. So if I tell you, then they know as well, and they know my main source of information. My safe word is pineapple. If you need safe words, pineapple pizza. I've been getting a lot of these questions lately. When will I troll the left? I'm an equal opportunity troll. I troll the left and the right. The problem is right now, as far as I can see, the left isn't having rallies right now. So you can't troll something that doesn't exist. As soon as I hear of a rally, I don't hear much about Biden rallies because people aren't, my understanding is that people aren't too crazy about him to begin with. He was just, what the left thought was a better choice than Trump. So I don't hear about many Biden rallies. If you guys hear of rallies, if you guys hear of left or right rallies going on, feel free to message me. You can message me on Facebook. You can email me, Michael at Picard. And I'll do my best to get there. If you can, give me as much advance notice as possible, so I can get to them, because I can't find every rally. I am a big fan of you being a big fan of me. Thank you very much. I don't lean left or right, and I'm definitely not a centrist. Um, I would consider myself a libertarian, or I'm an ANCAP. I don't believe there's anything that government can do that the free market can't do better. These headphones are Beats Studio from Apple. My happy place is in Maine. I love to go to Maine. It's like a home away from home for me. It's the way life should be, and it's where I go to sort of cool off and get away from all the noise. I do not have a girlfriend, so email me, um, and we'll hang out sometime. Diana is now running for governor of Massachusetts, and um, she keeps all her events private now, so no one knows where she'll be until she's actually there. And by the time she actually gets there, it's just a long drive for me. And the rally will probably be over by the time I get there. I'm going to a university right now, majoring right now in English, and then my plan is to go to law school. This is a large right now. I would highly recommend reading the book Just Mercy. I forgot the author, Brian Stevenson. So if you need a new book to read, uh, get Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. It's all about a lawyer getting a wrongly convicted man out of jail. Of course, I think the government, or of course, I think free market police would be better than government police. And here's the reason: government has no incentive to change. Whether they do a good job or a bad job, they still get paid. Whereas in the free market, I have a choice where I put my money. If a free market police agency does a bad job, I can take out my money and put it somewhere else. And when you affect their bottom line, they tend to change things. And consider United Airlines, for instance. Remember when that airline passenger got ejected off the plane forcibly by the police? What happened? So many people boycotted them. They lost billions of dollars, and they have since changed the way they do business. When you have a say in where your money goes, that's when you have better service, because they know that they can lose you at any time. Whereas the government, whether they do a good job or a bad job, they still take your money from you. In case none of you have heard of him, look up Lysander Spooner. He's a great philosopher. He even started a company to deliver mail that competed with the United States Post Office. And the reason why we have a law on the books today is because a law against competing with the post office is because they lost so much money, because Lysander Spooner was competing with them, that they just monopolized it. I haven't heard of Destiny, but sure. I'll talk with them. I'm guessing you mean an interview, and yes, I'm happy to do an interview. Just have them reach out to me. Hey guys, I am going to get going. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for donating. Thank you for supporting freedom. Thank you for supporting my work. Thank you for everything. I really love and appreciate you guys. Again, stay tuned for next week, where I will be talking about more ways you can support me and merchandise as well. Again, the date on that is Thursday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, love you guys. Thank you so much for the comments. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. Peace.